Welcome everyone to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight we're going to tie the LaFontaine Sparkle Pupa. That will be Gretchen's job. And I'll be tying the WWCaddis. You can see them here in the two pictures below.
This is the Sparkle Pupa from LaFontaine. And the one in our book is actually tied with a bead, but you can tie it, the original was tied without a bead. And I'm going to tie it without a bead tonight. And you can tie it in size 10 to 18 and a 1X long dry fly or scud hook. And the thread is brown. The Sparkle Pupa bubble is made with clear or white Antron fibers. I'm using Luraflash. Is where we got ours. Orange dubbing, and I'm using our Techatron, which has some Antron in it also. And I tell you, it's I think it's going to become my favorite of the three of ours. Today I was just amazed at how great it dubbed when I was practicing. Hackle, brown grizzly are the color of your choice. Peacock herl and thread for the head. And the bead, of course, is optional. Over here, we have the materials. There's a bunch of extra materials here, but some of this is the stuff that Al's going to be using. But we've got some pheasant. We've got some hackle, of course, our wax, our static guard. And we'll probably, use the big one. Yeah. Give it a little spray and me a little spray so we don't start having trouble. That Antron is amazing. It does stick to you sometimes. So this is the Antron Luraflash here. This is our Techatron orange dubbing. We're going to use size 10 hooks, peacock, thread.
Yeah, and those hackles laying right there to the front.
Oh,
those are your.
Oh, these are my hackles. Yeah.
Those are size for you.
Okay, so I should put those over here, maybe, huh?
Yep.
This is our destination fly. As you can see, we've got the bubble, we've got the hackle, and the peacock herl. Now, this bubble is supposed to look like in the water because of the way that Antron refracts light. Makes it look like a shuck. And that's what makes it just absolute killer. Also, you can leave some trailing fibers behind too if you wish. The tendency is to try to make a perfect, beautiful fly. This is not a perfect, beautiful fly. So keep that in mind. But it is a great fishing fly. So we're going to start out now. And there, of course, we've got our O-ring. And we'll pull the thread out. I'm going to start out, this just regular Danville thread, 6/0. And I'm going to start out at about the 1/4 point and do my base wrap. Now I'm going to tie the base about 2 turns short of the beginning of the bend of the hook. And the reason I'm doing that is I find that it's easier with that bare portion of the hook to squiggle my Antron around the way I want it. Whereas if you have a base wrap under the Antron, it kind of keeps it from moving. I combed this out and got this ready before we started today because I didn't think you'd want to watch me take all the knots out. Additionally, I am tying it with 1 and about 1/2 more of a strand of this. I tied it earlier with just 1 strand and it just seemed a little sparse to me. So I added another 1/2. Some people will use 2 full strands on like a size 14, and that's just too much because you want to be able to see the body through there. I'm going to trim this off. And I'm going to do a finger thumb tuck. Just tie it on. Not going to worry too much till I get to the back. As I start moving back, I'm going to use my thumb nail to kind of squiggle this around. Now let's check it and see how I did. That's a pretty good start. Now, if I just don't mess it up, that's the key. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is put on dubbing, and of course, we're going to use our BT's Tacky Dubbing Wax. Set the lid down up so I can just put my wax right back in there. And remember, you see how little I have turned up? You don't need to turn up much, because if you do, it just cuts it and makes a mess for you. I'm not going to go through that whole thing. You probably have heard it 16 times from us. Al's better at that than I am. I'm just going to tie. This is the, look at, I don't know if you can see it, but this has got Antron in it. I can see the sparkles. I don't know if you can or not. Yeah, there you can a little bit. And it's cut short enough so you just barely touch it and the wax grabs onto it. I know I should be doing this so you can see it. Yeah, it's hard to adjust to the camera sometimes. I didn't do a very good job here. I'm going to have to take it down here and fix it. There we go. Okay. Going to work my way to the back. Now, when you get back here by your Antron, do it very lightly so that you don't move that Antron. I discovered today that that's where I was making a mistake. And I kept thinking, I had that Antron looking good. What happened? Well, I messed it up when I put on my body. Now the fun begins, guys. We want to get this forward into our bubble.
You prefer that?
Yeah, put it right there, please. Okay, now I'm going to just take a couple of these out so we got some trailers behind. Use my thumbnail when I see a, and if you've got a streperous little section, like look right here, you can see that it's kind of separated. That's when we get the bodkin out and just move it a little bit. Okay, let's see how that looks when we get her done. Push it in, then I hold it, and I'm going to take a gentle wrap and then tighten it. Okay. I don't think that looks too bad.
You've never done that before, have you?
Yeah. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. Okay. And that is the most difficult part of this fly right there. And sometimes I find if I've got a fly that's being cranky with me and I can't get it right, unwrap it and start over. You know, so be sure you've got it like you want it before you trim off the excess. So there's our trailing shuck. That's probably, you probably can't see that very good, but there it is. And I think I'll cut it off a little shorter. I'm going to use from these feathers here, I'm going to pick out one, and I'm going to use the butt end where it's kind of webby, so it will look kind of like a soft tackle.
Use the other end for dry fly.
That's right. And then we're going to save the rest of it for Al to use as a dry fly. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Now notice I leave a little bit of bare stem there when I tie it on. Just makes it lay better. You don't get hair sticking out in funny directions that way. We don't need a lot of hackle on this, so I'm probably just going to take a couple of turns. There we go. Let's tie it off. A couple of turns. And I'm going to push it all back. And I'm going to kind of force it with my thread back over itself. Turn it off. I like that to go back a little more, don't you think? There, that's more like I want it. How's that look? That's good. And we're almost done.
Peacock. There you go. Yep, there it is. I didn't remember if I laid it out or not.
Okay. I got some peacock. I'm just going to take one. I notice a lot of times with peacock, when you first, if down by the butt, sometimes it'll be kind of bare right there. So I lots of times will cut a little bit of that off and then start a little further on it. Yeah. Come on, bud. Let's get in there. I love peacock. That's one reason I just didn't want to do the bead head, because I like to do this peacock on here. I just think it's so pretty. It's the best part of this fly is the peacock. And we've got a few little wild hairs there. Trim those off. Force them back. Okay, I'm going to whip finish it. We start the back part of the eye. 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps to the eye. And we did our good whip finish. And there it is.
Mine is the Wonder Wing Caddis. It's going to be tied on from an 8 to a 20. Tonight I'll be using a 10 so you can see the process fairly well. Brown thread, just like Gretchen was doing. The rib will be tying thread. You'll see how I will use I'll put my dubbing on to use the tying thread as my rib at the same time. But if you wish, you can use fine copper wire. The body's going to be orange dubbing just like Gretchen had. I'm going to use a pheasant breast feather, Wonder Wing style. We'll talk about that in detail. The hackle is brown, grizzly, or whatever color you want it to be. And there are other options. You can do the spun hair, deer hair, or a bullet head style. They all can work well. But let's take a look now over at the materials. Gretchen got a chance to spray herself down with the static guard, and now it's my turn. I need to get some of my hands and stuff. Or I don't know, there's something today we were testing out some of this stuff before we signed on with you all, and it just seemed like the static electricity was just jumping out of the sky. I don't know. It was really bad. Everything stuck. Anyway, I don't need that. Any of these goodies. Here's my dry fly hackle already sized for a size 10 hook. I'll just set that over here. Okay, we already got brown thread over there. I don't need to take another one over there. We've got the dubbing over there, all that stuff. Gretchen's got most everything over there except for these guys. And as you can see, that this is just a ringneck pheasant pelt, and it's been very well used. A lot of the stuff is missing. Tonight we're going to use what I call the arrowhead feathers. It probably has another name, but I don't know what it is. And if somebody knows what it's called, then you can let me know what it is. But I'll be using that mainly because it's got long fibers on it. And in tying this size number 8, I really need long fibers to do it. However, most of the time, these feathers would be used on a size 14 for something like the Mother's Day caddis, which is a tannish kind, and that's what we'll be using. Now I'm going to set that feather over to be used later, but I'm going to show you something else that's really intriguing. I want you to notice this feather right here. I'll pull it out. And that's a really cool looking feather. But the type of wing that it will produce is totally amazing, and I'll show you a little bit later. Don't let me forget to show it to you. I'll set that aside for right now, and we'll switch right back over to the vise. Now I'm going to start at the 1/3 position on the hook shank and just lay down a thread base. Go to the end of the shank and then back forward. All right, I'm going to pull my dubbing wax out and just kind of goober up and then I'll go ahead now and twist in one direction. And I'm just going to bring it here on my side of the vise because it's just a lot easier to do. You saw how it goes on, and I think you all know how to twist in one direction. So I'm going to start wrapping here at the front of the body, working my way towards the back of the hook. Alrighty, and here we are, and now I've run out of dubbing, and I'm at the back of the hook. And I said I was going to make the rib out of either fine copper wire or just the tying thread, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I want you to know this is a commercial tier's trick of just ribbing back forward after placing the body backwards, if you will, and using the thread as your rib. You can put a body on and just absolutely nothing flat. A 15-20 second body is nothing. And just wrap back, wrap forward, you're done. Set all that aside. Now comes the fun part. And we're going to get rid of all the really, excuse me, really long stuff here at the back. And I'll just trim this butt end of that off. I want you to notice we're going to measure how much of the stem we want to sweep back these fibers. We want to sweep back the fibers on a section of stem equal to the length of the hook shank. And that's kind of a rough guesstimation of just about the right amount. Now what I'm going to do is try to grab one more over on this side. There we go. I'm just going to hold it in place and take a couple of light turns, gentle turns around the feather. And here's where you can really mess up. As you see this part of the feather right here, let me get my pointer so you can see what I'm pointing at the swept back part. Well, you already know that we're going to, if you've seen any Wonder Wings that we tie, that we're going to pull this out from under those light wraps of thread to the length that we want it to be. If I grab it by that swept back part, I'll just thoroughly screw the wing up. Don't want to do that. I'm going to get my fingers back up here. Be sure you grab out here on the waist part of the feather. And I'll pull it to the length that we want. And I want that to stick out beyond the hook shank, just, probably a little bit less than the gap of the hook. You see how I'm holding that in place? Now I'll reach in with the other hand and tighten up and go ahead and bind the fibers down. Now what we end up with is a wing that I need to reposition just a little bit more on top of the hook. And there we've got our wing. Now I'm going to trim off the waist. But if this wasn't if the next fly wasn't going to be a size 8, then this could tie another fly or two. If we were doing 14s, then we just pull back a few of these fibers, which that's about what a 14 would be, and you'd go ahead and you get several more sets of wings out of that. So you don't just, that isn't waste, it's future flies. We'll set that aside over here. See how I grab that wing and then twist my vise and hold the wing steady? What that does is allow me to twist it into place. Now, get rid of the waste here. All right. Now I'll get some of that hackle that's left over when Gretchen uses up the webby stuff on the base. We end up with the spiky stuff that's good dry fly hackle. Now the webby stuff, we need to talk about that for a second. You see how you can see right here, it's really webby at the base end. Those feathers tend to be in what I call the middle of the saddle. The way the bird is with his saddle in place, the long spiky feathers like the one I'm holding right here hang down around the legs, and kind of pointing back down from the backbone towards the tail are these shorter feathers that have web in the base end. There's still some good dry fly quality stuff right here, but if you look right here, it's very webby. And so you can kind of make use of both parts of the feather. Now I'm going to go ahead and tie the stem in place, and like Gretchen did, I'm going to make sure that I have bare stem for that first turn. Otherwise, here's what happens. And I see this an awful lot on flies. I'll try to get those fibers real close, and I want you to notice how those stick back over the back of the fly. If you were tying a fly for the bronze, silver, gold for the FFI awards program, that would be a mark off on your score. Now I crisscrossed over that, and we'll just go ahead now and start wrapping forward. But before I get it all the way pulled up, I don't want it getting into the head of the fly or the eye of the hook. So I'll just get it forward to there. Now we're going to start our thread, or our hackle wraps. Wait a minute, let me show you something. We're into showing a few tips and tricks tonight. We're moving along at a pretty good pace, getting done quicker than we had planned on. These flies are really simple when you know how to do them, and when you don't know how to do them, they're an absolute pain in the you-know-what. Now, I just put a half hitch in there. And for some of you, you may have seen this before. It's a good time to go get a cup of coffee or some other beverage of choice. But we're going to bring the excuse me, I'm going to bring the bobbin rest into play. And most people use their bobbin rest like this. They pull it out, and they actually use it as a thread rest. And I'm going to move the camera just a little bit to the side so you can see that just a little bit better. Gretchen, remind me to move that back when I get through, otherwise everything will be off kilter. All right. Now, when we get ready to do rotary functions, we'll rotate the vise, and of course that keeps our thread in line. You see that? But when we get done with whatever we were doing, let's say the hackle has already been wrapped. I'll get that out of the way. Oh, it's too long. Now I have to crank the thread up so I can get it back to working length so I can go ahead and tie things off or do whatever I was going to do. Now let me show you how to use this the way we think it ought to be used. This is a bobbin rest, not a thread rest. And first off, let's talk about, I like a working thread length, and just like we have right here, it's about 1 inch. Once in a while, it'll slip out to 1.5 inches, but I like to keep it right about there. So what I'm going to do, instead of pulling my thread out to length, I'm going to lower this just a little bit. Now, I want you to notice that when I lower that and just set the bobbin on it, not the thread, it's still at the working length, and yet I can do all the rotating functions that I want to do. But there is one other way, just in case you've got a rotating vise and you've put away the bobbin rest and it's still not being, it's not hooked up to the vise because you never use it anyway. here's a way that you can use your fingers to do the whole process. I made my first turn. Now I'll take my my ring finger on my right hand, make it into a bobbin rest, and I can just wrap my hackle forward. And I'll just go ahead and finish wrapping by hand, but I wanted you to see the different ways that you can do that. But when I'm wrapping by hand, I want you to notice the twist that I have in that feather. That makes the feather lay tighter against its adjacent friend as it works its way forward. Now here's where we're going to show you another trick. Now first off, this is the John Caref way of tying off. We divide the hackle so that there is a V there at the front for the thread to go through. Now we could just wrap it over like this, like most flight tires do. But you know you can do this. Rotate your vise and tie it off just as well. 2 turns, just like we would have done before. Now we're down to the point of wrapping our... Here I go to all the trouble to show you how to not get fibers back over your fly. And what did I do? In dinking around here, trying to show you rotary techniques, I messed it all up. Anyway, if you didn't see it, I'll point it out to you in the first place. And there's some of you sharp-eyed fellows out there that have already caught that. So I'll beat you to the comment. So what I'm going to do right now is form what we call a setup for a good whip finish. And also a nice clean head. Again, for you people who are going for your bronze, your silver, or your gold, listen up. This can keep all that garbage out of the head. 2 turns of thread holding this right now. I'm going to bend this feather back. We call it dog-legging the feather. Now I'm going to wrap a jam knot in front. And what that does is builds a nice thread head that has no garbage trapped in it.
Boy, it looked like you were cutting the thread.
I was holding my breath, dear. Sometimes you have to, I always tell Gretchen, it's better to be lucky than good. Anyway, here we go. Now I'm going to place my whip finish, and it's really important for you to understand that to get a good whip finish, the turns of thread start at the back. Let me move forward on this just a bit.
Oh, yeah, I was supposed to remind you to move your camera.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I want you to see that is at the back of the head, and each turn now is going to be slightly forward from that back one. See if first turn, second turn slightly forward, third turn forward of that, and the fourth turn it'll be a four turn whip finish. Now I want you to notice that all of these turns disappear under the originals. If you had done what a lot of flight tires do, and let me move this camera over like I asked Gretchen to remind me, and we got all messed up here and didn't do it. But what happens is if you start at the hook eye and wrap each subsequent turn further back on the hook, you'll end up with that strand laying over the top of the turns before it goes under the turns. And guess where the weak spot is? Well, it doesn't take rocket science to figure that out. Okay, we're going to trim off the thread. I don't really cut it. I just close the scissors and push. See that little V there? Now the same thing with the feather. Push. Get that out of the way, lay that down. And now we have now you can see what the adult looks like.